And welcome to Good Game, the show for gamers, by gamers. I'm Barjo.
And I'm Junglist. And this week we have the power. Superpowers, that is.
That's right, we'll be leaping into Prototype, a shape-shifting, power-absorbing sandbox game that packs plenty of punch.
We'll be building a blocky battalion and sending them off to war in LEGO battles.
Huh? And Fuel is an open-world racer that's already won an award for having the largest game environment, but doesn't win an award for anything else.
And then we'll be meeting some of our industry's greatest storytellers to find out what goes into making an epic game narrative and why a great story is so important.
We've been dependent on the technology and the flash and the gameplay and concentrating on that instead of thinking about ways to do story that isn't a cutscene.
All that and more. But can you guess the game for this week? Time for the news.
Good game. In an interview with UK newspaper The Times, Activision CEO Robert Kotick has cast doubt on whether or not his company will continue to publish games for Sony's PlayStation 3. Activision currently publish some of the biggest game franchises in the world across multiple platforms, including the Guitar Hero and Call of Duty series. However, Kotick told The Times that if Sony doesn't drop the price of the PS3 soon and increase game sales as a result, that Activision may have to stop supporting the console. Kotick went on to say that the PlayStation 3 was expensive to develop for, and the Wii and Xbox 360 were generating better financial returns for the company, leaving a big question mark over the publisher's future plans. It's been a few months since German game developer Factor 5 closed down its San Rafael, California-based studio, but in the past week, some interesting legal news has emerged for the company. Factor 5, who are best known as the developers of the Star Wars Rogue Squadron series of space combat games, are reportedly being sued by a number of their former employees for unpaid wages. The suit alleges that Factor 5 fraudulently transferred funds into another company just prior to filing for bankruptcy, although these claims are yet to be substantiated. The main developer behind the popular military propaganda series America's Army has been closed down by the United States Army in the past week. The military-owned studio, based in Emeryville, California, had just released the latest game in the first-person shooting series America's Army 3 before they were closed down. The U.S. Army reportedly closed the studio to consolidate their game development efforts into one large studio based in Redstone, Alabama, and have promised that there will be more releases in the America's Army franchise in the coming months and years. And finally, a quick correction. Last week we said Capcom were responsible for Pac-Man Championship Edition and Galaga Legions, when in fact it was Namco Bandai. As an apology to Toru Iwatani, I will now drink from the Noob Cup. Tastes like fail.
Good game.
Fuel is an open-world racer set in a post-global warming universe, which actually kind of looks like the Australian outback most of the time. You compete for precious fuel in the most counterproductive of ways by transporting your vehicles with fuel-guzzling helicopters and racing around as much as possible.
Bez, did you say post-global warming universe?
I know, it's kind of a lame premise for an alternate universe. Ooh, watch out for the warmings! The world is actually pretty cool though, with lots of cliffs and dirt tracks for you to slide about in. There's also a great day-night cycle with some really exaggerated colours for dawn and dusk, and there's some okay weather effects too.
In fact, it's one of the largest open worlds ever created in a game. It streams well as you turn your vehicle, there's no camera catch-up, and only a slight bit of framiness in the dusty areas like the ashtray.
As you climb up one side of a mountain and go down the other, you do get this great feeling of scale. Tracks are tweaked with debris and tough areas, especially right at the end of every track. There appears to be some sort of really tough obstacle or turn, and it's kind of mean that way. Which brings us to a big problem with this game, resetting.
I know what you mean, Badge. One false move, a crash, or a forced reset will almost always cost you the race, even on a rookie setting. They're just badly placed, and you'll often go from first place to last place within a matter of seconds. It's just unfair.
There's also no reward for coming second or third, which is really disheartening when you sit through an 8-minute race only to lose it right at the end on a corner or a bad turn. And Jung, you really need to do these on the harder difficulty as well, because you unlock stars, and you need these stars to open up the other areas of the map.
Yeah, if you win a race by a reasonable stretch, you'll find yourself going back and doing it again on a harder difficulty just to get that extra star, which is grindy. It annoyed us because there's no reason for it to be so punishing, and you kind of get that vibe that your opponents only mess up when they're on your screen.
Besides all this, Jung, I still quite enjoyed Fuel. They do some very smart things with the loading. You can teleport to career events and selected helipads around the world, but it is worth exploring because you get the odd fuel pickup and also unlock other races, such as the chopper chase, which sees you hurtling after a helicopter on the horizon. It's not worth exploring without a decent amount of fuel to trade, though. You could spend 10 minutes driving to a race you've spotted only to find out you don't have enough fuel to buy the vehicle for that race.
The game handles checkpoints well and open world racing in general pretty well, and you can switch your GPS on and off with these. Even though the on-screen arrows are a little intrusive and distracting, at least there's no checking a mini-map every 5 seconds, which I know is your pet peeve in an open world racer, Badge.
Yeah, Jung, they got that pretty right, and it's fun looking for shortcuts through the bush.
There is a nice sense of freedom that you get by just gunning it into the distance. Often shortcuts can end with a tree in your face, though, so straying from the path is not without risk.
Why they chose a bright white flash to indicate going through a checkpoint, though, I'll never know, Jung. It's kind of like having a paparazzi sitting next to you while you're racing. I quite like the variety in the tracks, Jung, and if you're going to go for an unrealistic physics, unmoddable game like this, you really need to have that, and this has got stacks. I'm giving it 7.5 out of 10 rubber chickens.
I found Fuel to be unrewarding, Badge, and it just made me put the controller down in a huff. I'm giving it 6.
Good game.
Tickle, tickle, tickle! Over here! Ooh! Is this annoying yet?
Oh, you're lucky the law took away my auto axe, Tingle. Now tell me, where did you find this pile of twisted metal?
I found it in the couch when I was looking for loose gamer points.
That's not how you find... And where, pray tell, did you get this couch?
Well, it's not like I went outside to get it.
Do you really think you should be using this thing? Aren't these the guys who got shut down in the 50s for trying to engineer a living Pokemon?
Chill out, Home Slice. That was 100 years ago. What's the worst that could happen?
Good game.
Nowadays, there's lots of LEGO games, from Rock Band to Batman, but LEGO Battles is the first real-time strategy game for LEGO, and it's on the DS, and it's not bad.
There's not much in the way of RTS for the DS, and it's a bit of a shame because this genre really suits the touchscreen. In LEGO Battles, you play through 6 campaigns, from Pirates to the King to Space Marines, and the cutscenes are a lot funnier than other LEGO games.
It's a trip down memory lane in some ways, because a lot of these Legos have never been in a video game before. Badge and I were quite excited to see the sharks and using the horses and the space dudes. What the game lacks in unit variety, it makes up for with lots of campaigns and settings. This may look like a kid's game, but it does have depth in the hero abilities. Our favorite was the Monkey Swarm.
There's a basic amount of base building and resource gathering, and occasionally you'll be stressed out with waves of enemies requiring you to build up your defenses. You can only queue 3 units in a production line though, which is a bit annoying. You can, however, get your units to help out with that production to speed everything up, which is good if you want a lot of stuff to happen in a hurry.
Selecting units with the stylus is pretty good, although you do struggle now and then when you're trying to select one unit amongst a group. You can assign a group with the bumper button, which helps, and double tapping will select all of that particular unit. But you can only select 9 units at any point in time, which means in the big battles, there's a fair bit of micromanagement.
It is basic RTS, but you know, it really grabbed me, Jung. I love the music, and it scrolls really fast and smooth. This is the most fun I've had on my DS all year. It's a shame there's only local multiplayer, but I still enjoyed it. I'm giving it 8 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Bad pathfinding in an RTS, it's just unforgivable. I mean, some of the units just give up if they reach a choke point and there's a lot of traffic there. LEGO Battles was close to being awesome, and we hope we see more RTS on the DS in the future. There's just a few niggles they need to work out with the interface before I'm fully on board. I'm giving it 7 out of 10 rubber chickens.
In the early 90s, full-motion video was the latest craze, but not all FMV games were great gaming moments, like this. Make My Video, Marky Mark, and the Funky Bunch.
He's so cute.
You're such a perv. This guy is a serious musician.
The game came out in 1991 for the Sega Mega CD, and it featured the shirtless teen heartthrob dancing and rapping his way through 3 of his most popular hits, including his US #1, Good Vibrations, and 2 other forgettable tracks. Was it really that bad, though? Yes. For a start, it had some of the most obnoxious acting ever seen in a video game.
Don't you want to ask some real Marky Mark experts?
No, there's no way I'm going in there.
A man? What's a man doing in here?
That's no man. That's my brother.
Bad acting was more or less expected from these FMV games, though, so what really made Make My Video, Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch so bad was its gameplay, because it had almost none whatsoever, and in fact, it was actually a bit like hard work. It was laid out like a really primitive video editing program, and you had to select pieces of raw footage, edit them together into a sequence, and then just listen to the music play. And when the music is as bad as this stuff, then you know that your ears aren't going to be having fun either.
She wants to make the new Marky Mark video more fluffy.
Wait a minute. Your mother and I watch a lot of VH1. Maybe we could help.
Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch, what were you thinking?
Good game.
It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. Video games were still in their infancy, and the stories were humble. A lone spaceship struggling against an alien invasion, or a plumber trying to save his kidnapped princess from a giant ape. Then technology advanced. We have better graphics and more spectacular explosions. But are our stories getting any better?
I would love for us to get out of science fiction, fantasy, and post-apocalyptic, because that's basically where we've been mired now since the mid-'80s.
Lee Sheldon is a veteran storyteller whose credits include Charlie's Angels and Star Trek: The Next Generation, as well as adventure games such as Murder on the Orient Express. And he's the author of the nonfiction book Character Development and Storytelling for Games.
It's funny, a lot of people have said that still today, games and story shouldn't be in the same product. I've been hearing that now for a long time. I've been told that people just want to play. They don't want to be stopped by story. But I think what they're reacting to is the fact that we haven't changed the delivery system for the story.
I'm on my way.
Telling stories is not the issue. There are a lot of people out there that can tell stories. But figuring out how to put them into the game so they are not ghettoized, so they are not a distraction from the play. I think any moment where I'm holding that controller that I can't press a button is a problem for me.
We are under attack, taking heavy casualties. I repeat, heavy casualties.
We have a number of examples, and we have for years, of people that actually can combine the story and the gameplay, like Half-Life. How How long ago was Half-Life and Half-Life 2? And there's still people who come around every year or so saying, oh, I think I've solved story in gaming, and we're going to call it branching. So you have, multiple endings. Well, who cares about multiple endings? I want people to replay a game because it touched them somehow.
You're saying this only to make me go.
I'm saying it because it's true.
I think of how many times I've seen the film Casablanca. I'm a hopeless romantic, but I know the ending.
But what about us?
We'll always have Paris.
I still watch it again and again. I don't need multiple endings.
He's looking at you, kid.
Developers have been playing with branching narratives for some time now, such as David Cage, creator of the story-rich Fahrenheit. At this year's E3, I asked him about his new game, Heavy Rain, and the storytelling challenges they faced.
Games are a very conservative industry. Technology moves very fast, but the ideas behind the game are really slow to evolve. And we thought we couldn't tell a decent story with the kind of interface most games have to offer. So we had to come up with new ideas and new solutions and new answers for that. I wrote the game on my own. It's not that I wanted to. All this is really new. We still invent the vocabulary we use, the grammar, the bricks we can use to tell this kind of experience. And it really takes a lot of time and energy just to figure out how it works, how we can blend together, interactivity, storytelling, how to write a story based on 3 branches. And even linear writers coming from movies have difficulties to understand how it works because it's a different way of writing. It's not about writing one good story. It's about writing many, many different stories with branches.
Lee believes there's an alternative to multiple endings, or what he likes to call the branching tree of death.
I've been working on a system I call modular storytelling for years, which allows the story to be told not A to B to C to D to E all the way up to Z, but you can jumble up the blocks in any order you want and still tell the same story. Think of Don Quixote de la Mancha. That was written as what we call a picaresque novel, which means that each episode is discrete, just like television. And they're about the same emotional weight. And you can flip them in any order you want and still come out with this great last scene where Don Quixote, who's absolutely mad, of course, thinks that he has failed at his quest, which was to prove that chivalry is still alive, when actually we know he has succeeded. And that's still a very moving moment, and it doesn't matter the order of the scenes it took to get there.
I don't like this ending. I don't think the jury likes it either.
Well then, he's failed.
Other developers, such as Chet Valicek of Valve, believe that as a medium, games do certain things really well, and we should concentrate on those experiences rather than emulating films or literature.
How come this book doesn't have moving pictures in it? Well, because it's a book, and books often have more internal thought than movies have, right? And you kind of like every medium does something really well. There'll be things happen that can only happen in plays because of that energy that you get of being in a live studio audience. Movies do like montages and passes of time really well. Books do internal thought. Everything has its own thing it does. And trying to say that everything has to do everything is just a weird thing to me.
I think what we need to do is to be a little less tunnel visioned and look around. What I tell my students now that when I'm teaching them is, you want to create, you have an obligation to know something about the world, to know something about people. You need to read books you might not ordinarily read. You need to see films that you might not ordinarily see. You need to travel. And if you don't take that upon yourself, that obligation to learn, you're never going to see enough that will allow you to get beyond this sort of adolescent thing that we have going right now. The ideal is that the storytelling and the game should be built together, playing off one another as you go. You do that with the art, you do that with the programming. You need to do it with one of the most important elements, which is the storytelling.
Good game.
What do you think, Jung? Has game storytelling reached its peak?
I think we're far from that, man. I mean, not only have we not discovered what interactive storytelling really can do, I don't think we've properly tried yet.
Yeah, until story gets the same love and attention and commitment as all the other components in a game, we won't really know.
Well, now to a game that does a pretty good job with storytelling. Prototype is an open-world superhero game where a very 28 days later virus has infected New York City. You have no memory of how you got infected.
Start by going through the torso.
But you do have the unique ability to consume other life forms, taking their memories, knowledge, and gaining the ability to shapeshift into them.
And these games have been very popular ever since Spider-Man let us swing through an entire city and Crackdown let us jump off a tall skyscraper. And this game bears a shocking resemblance to a game we reviewed a few weeks ago, Infamous.
Manhattan Island has been quarantined by the military to contain this rampant virus, and it's a damn fine setting for a superhero game. Usually though, with these open world games, you get the feeling that each element isn't as good as it could be. Depth of combat, graphics, they try to be so big, they're typically a jack of all trades, master of none.
There's a few things that Prototype does that you just can't get anywhere else. As you consume more life forms, you evolve new weapons, such as the fast claws and the powerful hammer fists.
These are trade-offs between speed and power until you get the sword, which has both. You'll also get defensive upgrades, such as a shield, armor, and thermal vision. And you'll need all you can get as you free run on every surface in the city to find out who did this to you.
And of course, we have to mention all the special moves you can learn and all the movement options as well. Oh, and there's also this.
A word about the technology behind it all. Beyond killing them or consuming them, it's rare that you'll interact with civilians or soldiers, but their AI has everything it needs to feel real. And the city is absolutely full of them. Wherever you go, there's a large-scale battle between the military and the infected. And this slowly starts to go the way of the infected, which gives you this feeling of, if I don't stop this virus, this is the apocalypse.
And technology is great, you know, but not for its own sake. It's how the developer uses that technology that makes great games. An example is in the explosions. If you demolish an area, the smoke cloud and fire will stay around for a couple of minutes. And the parkour system, it's just fantastic.
I know, right? That to me is the key to this game. Movement is so fluid. Wherever you go, whatever you're doing, you have like 3 options. You can super jump around, or you can air dash, or you can glide, all of which flow seamlessly into each other, and it's a joy to move around.
It's almost like if there were no enemies in the game, it would still be fun to play.
Yeah, absolutely, but the enemies also add to the movement fun as well. Spend too long in an area and they'll call in a strike team.
Authorization tag 00 Hotel. Priority strike package incoming. Over.
As the game goes on, these strike teams get bigger, which means more rockets, more tank shells. All of these cause a knockback effect, and to avoid it, you have to change directions very quickly. It's a great feeling in a game when you just barely avoid a massive explosion, and this game captures that feeling perfectly.
And when a strike team gets called in when you're already on a mission, that's when things really get hectic. I remember a pursuit mission where I was chasing an infected boss all over the city, and a strike team was chasing me.
I think we're gonna have to save that as a great moment in gaming.
I think so. Before long, you realize that the strike teams are getting harder and harder to take out, and the difficulty curve is really well managed here. Soon, the Rambo path becomes less of an option, and even skilled players will have to whittle down the defenses from the outside and infiltrate from within.
Yeah, those last few missions took me quite a while, Badge. All around took us about 11.5 hours to beat it with only a few side challenges. Final thoughts?
This is a really rough and tumble action game, and you really get that sense of vertigo as you jump from a really tall skyscraper and hit the ground in mere seconds. I loved it, Jug. Nothing beats hurling cars at helicopters. I'm giving it 9 out of 10.
It really is a game that has it all. There's action, there's story, you've got your AoE, you've got your tentacle Hadouken. There's fast, fluid movement. You can play Rambo, or you can feel like a predator seeking out that one target. You can feel invincible while being challenged. You've got your hordes of fodder enemies, and you've got your Godzillas. It's still not a master of all trades, but it's a damn impressive, Jack. I'm giving it 9 as well.
Good game.
Did you guess the game for this week?
It was a game called The Terminator for the Nintendo Entertainment System. It came out in 1992, and not only was it one of the first games to be based on the 1984 movie, but it was also the very first game that Prototype developer Radical Entertainment worked on.
The game loosely followed the plot of the film, but with awful level design, a bland palette of greys and greens, and a difficulty curve that would stump even a cybernetic organism. The Terminator finesse was so bad that we wished it was designated for termination. Definitely a long way from the quality of prototype, John.
Speaking of quality, what's the next week's show?
We're going to be transforming and rolling out a review of the latest blockbuster movie tie-in, Transformers 2: Revenge of the Fallen.
We'll be loading up our 6 shooters for the Wild West-themed Call of Juarez 2 Bound in Blood.
And we'll order an army of miniature monster minions to do our evil bidding in Overlord 2.
Plus, Ray meets some gamers who take their obsession to costumed proportions as she investigates cosplay culture and even has a crack at it herself.
As always, don't forget to jump on the forums and leave us a post. Until next week, gamers, Barjo out.
Junglist out.